I did research for this and found out that you leaned heavily on guided meditations and breath work in order to help yourself in a time when you get energy from other people, but you were more isolated. Talk to me about that.
I had a really, really tough couple of years with COVID. Professionally, things were crazy. I mean, Shopify, we were really fortunate that overnight, every physical retailer shut down, and we were the recipient of all these incredible retailers and merchants and brands moving online, and most of them did so with Shopify. So professionally, things were crazy and exciting, and things were, it was an interesting time at the company. But professionally, it wasn't a great time for me. I felt incredibly lonely. And so I recognized a couple of things. One is my anxiety levels were escalating. And two, my loneliness quotient was also escalating. I felt more lonely. I wasn't, I had my family there, but I felt more lonely. And so one of the things that I knew that was helpful for me from an anxiety perspective was meditation. And I just doubled down and I was like, okay, like if I was doing 3 minutes before, I'm going to do 9 minutes now. And even breath work, I started to look at breath work. I historically, I used, I guess they call the box method. So 4 breaths in, hold for 4, 4 breaths out, hold for 4. And I just began reading as much as I could about, okay, is that the most effective way? It turns out it's not. From a physiological perspective, and maybe we can share this, I can share this post with you later on. You can share with your listeners. But 2 in, and then like 2 quick breaths in. So 2 quick in, 1 long out happens to actually be better in terms of activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So I started researching this more and understanding it more. And as sort of COVID, whatever, I don't know if it ended per se officially, but now that we're sort of back in person, I've continued those practices. But that period of time I got really interested and curious about longevity. I joined this little group. It's called Longevity League. It's kind of sounds like a lame name, but this group of people that are, for the most part, 2, 3, 4 decades older than I am. Some of these guys are in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and they spend a great deal of their time researching longevity. And so I was like, hey, can I join your club? And initially they're like, well, you're not really the right demographic and you're not really the right age. They let me in and I try to add as much value, but I started to think more about longevity. And some of it is just like, metformin right now seems to be everywhere. Everyone seems to be taking metformin who's over the age of 50 right now.
What is that?
And metformin is actually a diabetic, it's medication for type 2 diabetes, but it turns out lower dosages of it is really helpful for things like inflammation, which can potentially lead to cancer. So I was like, oh, I'm reading about metformin. Like, let me bring this to the longevity group and figure out what these great people think and smart people think. So I started thinking more about longevity, started thinking more about mental health. And, we're in Austin together right now at your studio. The first thing I did when I woke up this morning was I went for a run, sat at a hotel nearby, and then I meditated for 10 minutes. Am I better now because I did that than I would have without? Maybe not. Like, I don't really know, but over the long run, absolutely. Because I can manage my anxiety better. I feel like I've been on this is the last day of a 2-week roadshow that I've been on from New York to Arizona to San Francisco to Los Angeles and now here in Texas. I haven't seen my family in 2 weeks, which is really, really tough. And actually I get to go home tonight and see my wife and my kids, which I'm really excited by. But because I'm on the road like this, and this is a media tour, investor tour, partner tour, merchant tour, I need to take care of myself. And so I need to have real habits and rituals in my life that allow me to just to keep going at the same energy levels over time. And like you, I'm a hustler, I'm an entrepreneur. I got a lot going on. I need to create some scaffolding in order to maintain this level of energy. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. Talk to me about, I heard you mention in a previous podcast about how, you say, or you breathe a certain way, you impact the stock price by potentially millions of dollars. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure on you. And you mentioned, you do breath work, you run, you meditate, but like, how do you deal with that pressure?
I try to channel it. I try not to. In the same way that I think anyone that has anxiety or depression, you're not going to ever eliminate it entirely. The better strategy, I think, is to manage it. So when I feel really anxious, do some breath work or go for a run or, do something that one of my tactics that helps me manage it too. Same thing on the pressure. I actually really like the pressure sometimes. There are certain times where, I'm not sure if I breathe a certain way, the stock's going to change. But certainly if I say the wrong thing on television on CNBC, or I say the wrong thing on an earnings call, that could affect the stock price. And actually, like, I don't really care about the stock price in the short run. What I do appreciate is that the amount of people that are counting on me to do a good job there. We have 10,000 people at Shopify. We have 3 million or many millions of merchants on the platform. We have lots of partners, the general public. I mean, in Canada, we're sort of Canada's tech company. There's a lot of people that are relying on Shopify. And I think I take that responsibility very seriously. So I try to use that pressure as a tactic to memorize the right metrics and make sure I have my story and my narrative down pat, to make sure that before on what day was that? On Wednesday, I was one of the speakers at the Morgan Stanley conference in San Francisco with our new CFO, Jeff, and woke up that morning and it was like day 10 on this roadshow. I wasn't feeling myself. I was like, okay, get your shit together. Like, I went for a run. I don't really do the whole cold bath thing or anything. It's not my style, but I took a colder shower than usual. And I just reviewed my notes and I was like, okay, here's the narrative. And Jeff and I met for a coffee beforehand. We're like, okay, here's exactly how we think about things. Here are the questions we think we're going to get. I try to use that anxiety, use that pressure to create better results. I work well under pressure, like even in undergrad, but also in grad school and in business school and law school. I was a crammer. I was a procrastinator. But when it came time to perform, I think I did a good job of that. So I'm not trying to remove that pressure. It's we choose this life. If you don't want this pressure, go be a fucking dentist. You'll make good money. Most of the dentists I know don't work Fridays. That's not what you and I are going for, Danny. Like, you and I, we want to be in the arena. We want to build something really meaningful and special. And whatever the reasons, some of us are doing it because of money. Some of us are doing it because of impact. Some of us are doing it because, like, someone in high school told us we were no good, and we just want to prove it to everyone that we are good, that we are valuable, that we can be successful. Whatever your reason is, I would say, rather than trying to remove that pressure, embrace it and try to find ways to channel it into really productive outcomes and impact.